brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Riding through the city on my bike all day, cause the filth took away my license. It doesn't get me down and I feel okay, cause the sights that I'm seeing are priceless. Everything seems to look as it should, but I wonder what goes on behind doors. A fella looking dapper and he's sitting.
They are ready. They're racing. Animo away only fairly. Animo holding on. Animo this time for the big A.
Sun is in the sky, oh why would I wanna be anywhere else? Sun is in the sky, oh why would I wanna be anywhere else? When you look with your eyes, everything seems nice. But if you look twice, you can see it's all lies. There was a little old lady who was walking down the road. She was struggling with bags from Tesco. There were people from the city having lunch in the park. I believe that is called al fresco. When a kid came along to offer a hand, but before she had time to accept it, hits her over the head, doesn't care if she's dead, cause he's got all her jewellery and wallet.
Sharp and Smart goes to it, the outside lunges and got up to win.
Walking around London town. Sun is in the sky, oh why would I wanna be anywhere else? Sun is in the sky, oh why would I wanna be anywhere else? When you look with your eyes.
Awesome to see New Zealand's success across the Tasman. That was, of course, Group 1 success. Not only that, Cox Plate weekend and an important weekend for our 3-year-olds on home shores. Michael Guerin is my co-host this morning. Michael, very good morning.
Good morning to you, Em. Happy Labour Day to everybody watching around the country and even some of our Australian friends watching on YouTube. I keep waiting for this bubble to burst, Em. I wasn't expecting this bubble when we retired so many Group 1 horses last season. I don't think we went into this spring expecting it to turn into what it is. But it just rolls on and on and on. And such a great result for Graeme and for Debbie and their team. It's a $2 million race, which is the richest race we've won on New Zealand, Australian shores. We've had a couple comparable, but we haven't had one richer since Mongolian Khan in the Caulfield Cup all those years ago. Shortly we'll speak to Graeme Rogerson. Also on way in this morning, we're going to talk to Bruce Sharrock about NZTR joining the push for geo-blocking of overseas bookmakers. It's going to be a massive, massive financial story heading forward for racing. We're going to give you that in segment 3 today, as there's a lot to go on, including that really cool day out of Te Rapa.
Yeah, really looking forward to that chat a little bit later on. For now, though, let's go back and relive that Group 1 success across the Tasman. It was, of course, Sharp and Smart.
Champion Stakes, Bunkart's gone. Elliptical in the middle, moved up with Machelade. Williamsburg dropped off a length. Sharp and Smart angling into the clear. Renaissance Woman right down the outside, and she's Extreme Solace chasing to do. It's Elliptical, and Machelade slogging it out in the spring champion. Sharp and Smart's coming late. It's Elliptical in front from Machelade. Sharp and Smart. Elliptical just in front. Sharp and Smart goes to it, the outside lunges, and I think got up to win.
There's one word that comes to mind, and that was tough. What a performance by Sharp and Smart. It's something that we've just become used to, obviously off the back of the gloaming and then into the spring champion. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome in Graeme Rogerson to the show. Graeme, a very good morning to you, and what a weekend. And gosh, Sharp and Smart was so tough, wasn't he?
Well, that's him, you know. He certainly got the will to win. Every time you ask him for a bit more, he gives it, you know. And Huey Bowman said he got caught wide, everything went wrong, and he still kept coming.
He did keep coming, didn't he? And you had the man for the job in Hugh Bowman. He knows how to win a Group 1. What were you thinking sort of through the run when he was 3 wide punching the breeze?
Oh, well, he doesn't pull. He's such a quiet animal, and he's just the ideal racehorse. I thought he would have gone for him a little bit sooner, but anyway, he got the job done, and he loves the horse, you know. He's going to come to New Zealand and ride him.
Graeme, obviously you're heading to the Victoria Derby. Is that confirmed? And as the first part of that question, how did he come through the run? Because it's going to make for quite a busy week.
He's an unbelievable horse. He eats everything. I've never had a horse eat so much hay as this. He ate up. He worked this morning. He leads this afternoon. He'll travel all night to get there, I think 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's a 9-hour float trip, and we'll get him organised. And I think if any horse can do it, he will. He's a great traveller. He's got the best nature. Anyone can ride him. And so Huey had already taken a ride in the Golden Eagle on Saturday. He'd love to ride him, but James McDonald rides him.
Graeme, he's going to have a few New Zealanders against him, or a New Zealander, Mr Maestro. You've beaten him before. Is your horse a better horse now than when he raced Mr Maestro back in the Champagne Stakes way back in May?
I think he'll get better and better. I think next time in he'll be a real horse. He's just got so much more to learn and do, but he's the sort of horse that if he gets alongside him, he's a winner. And that's the only reason I use visor blinkers on him, because Huey said he's just happy to stay beside the other horse in the gloaming, you know, and they're real good horses. But I think he's the makings of something special, and but we'll see. Time will tell.
Graeme, we saw him pick himself up off the canvas in both the gloaming and the Spring Champion on very wet tracks. Do you think he can be just as potent on top of the ground, potentially at Flemington on Saturday?
I think he's better on top of the ground, but he's such a racehorse. If it comes to a real slog, he'll be there, don't worry. I think he's improved, and I think he's getting better, and I've got some real big plans for him, you know. I think he's going to be a real horse.
Graeme, you mentioned the fact you talked to Huey about potentially coming to New Zealand. You outlined to me yesterday that could be the Herbie Dyke against the older horses at Te Rapa and the Vodafone Derby. So are you suggesting he'll be racing in those races before he heads to the Sydney Spring?
There is a lot of options with him. He flies back home to New Zealand on Wednesday next week. He's going to have 3 weeks to a month out, and he'll probably have a 1,400 metre race somewhere. No doubt Bailey will be riding because she rides in Terrell Ryan riding work. And then I looked at a couple of options for him. There's a mile, but there's also the $5 million All-Star mile here, you know, and the prize money's just going up. Peter Valente told me Saturday, he said, wait till you see what the prize money is. And so he'll travel back here in March, back to Australia, where he runs. I thought we're aiming for the AJC Derby and the Queen Elizabeth, and then if he finishes off his winter, he'll probably may run in the Queensland Derby. But we'll just see what happens, and he deserves a break after this week because it's a big ask. You know, if you had your choice, you'd like the VRC Derby to be a week later. But Huey said, I'll definitely come to New Zealand to ride this horse. And he's quite disappointed he's not on him in the Derby. But anyway, what will be, and he's a good replacement, I think, James.
Yeah, just a very good replacement, I'd say. You've gone from one great to another there, Graeme. Big thank you for coming on the show this morning. I'm sure a very, very special weekend for yourself and Debbie.
Well, I said to the boys, it's only half done. If we win next week, it'll be good. We look forward to getting back home. And the good news from Peter Valente is they are building a big complex at Randwick for us visitors. So that was a good news.
Awesome to catch up with Graeme Rogerson there, and what a win by his horse. And it's going to be a big ask, as he said, to go down to Victoria. I did it with Dundeel many years ago, and I think there was 2 weeks in between. We did run in the Vars in the meantime, but yeah, it's a lot to ask, but they've got the right horse to do the job.
He seems the right horse, doesn't he? He seems very tough, and we saw that in both the gloaming and even in the Brisbane campaign, and I think he was out for the count at the 300 and regathered himself and came across heels.
Did it so wide. I'm
not sure how good he is. It's hard to work out because he's obviously very good.
Yeah.
Maybe he's really, really good.
And just wins by those small margins, and you don't really, just keeps winning.
Well, if he wins this Saturday in the Derby, he'll be, by October 31, one of our highest ever stake-winning 3-year-olds. Because he's won $2.5 million worth of races in the last 12 days.
Yeah.
And he's got $2 million this week. Now, he and Mr Maestro met in the Champagne Stakes back about 6 months ago. And on that occasion, Sharp and Smart beat him quite easily. Mr Maestro didn't let down on a firmer track that day. Spoke to Andrew Forsman, he's really happy. Instantly, James McDonald was straight on the horse once Huey wasn't available. It's going to be enthralling for us. We look at that market, which we might look at again, because Berkeley Square was really good at,
Very good.
at the Valley.
Yeah.
But we've got the 2 favourites. And they're not horses who at the back end of last season we thought, oh, well, this is the Derby winner or Derby favourite. So really enthralling. 2 of the great jockeys, James and Damien Lane. Graeme Rogerson's been there, done this before. Andrew Forsman's been there, done this before. I'm actually looking forward. I know this is very Kiwi-centric, Em. I'm looking forward to the Derby more than the Melbourne Cup because of that New Zealand
The Kiwi
interest.
matchup, yeah.
Who wins? If, say they get neutral barriers, 7 and 8 next to each other on a 5. So let's make it all neutral. Who wins out of those 2?
I much prefer the preparation of
Mr Maestro?
Mr Maestro, because we had the gloaming rescheduled, we had the Spring Champion on the back of that, you've got the travel, whereas Mr Maestro has been building to this. This is a faultless preparation, but Sharp and Smart, he keeps lifting, so you just don't know.
I'm with you. I think Mr Maestro and the marketers too deserves to be the favourite, but I wouldn't be stunned if this time next week we're saying, wow, the Sharp and Smart's the next big thing out of New Zealand. And it's great for Graeme and for Debbie, and also even for Bailey, who does some of the riding on the horse, because Graeme's at the back end of his career now. He's had a Hall of Fame career. And this is the horse that's going to take him back around Australia if he wants to. And he's got all the attributes to travel well. As we heard, he travels well. But most importantly, in the current environment, he can race on wet and dry. And as we've seen at the carnivals, spring and autumn,
have to be
so
able to
often
do
they're
that,
wet.
yeah.
And he's probably got a distance range of 1,600, maybe up to 2,400. So he's the perfect horse to travel with. Well done to Westbury Stud, the second Group 1 winner for Redwood. They'll be thrilled. Horse who went through the Ready to Runs last year and was bought back at around 90,000, I believe. Ready to Runs are on in about a month's time. These are the sort of horses you can buy at the Ready to Runs.
Yeah, and they're coming up very soon, aren't they? Whilst we're on the subject of Australian racing, we're going to go on with the Cox Plate. And that was, of course, a win for Animo and James McDonald, and what a performance it was.
Joined by Animo, who looks destiny in the face at the 150. Animo takes the lead from Zaki. Alligator Blood, I'm thunderstruck, but it's Animo clear. I'm thunderstruck late. Animo holding on. Animo this time for the big A. Won it from I'm thunderstruck.
What is it about this race for you?
It's the best horses assembled, sorry. I was on a champion today, and I wouldn't go lie, it's been a big build-up. Ladbrokes, Cox Plate, it's unbelievable. I can't believe it, and yeah, especially on this horse. Obviously, it's been a massive build-up, and look, I felt the tension. I could cut it with a butter knife, but it was unbelievable. It's good to get it over and done with, and geez, I don't know how Huey Bowman did it with 4 of them. What a race, but I'm so proud of this horse. Full credit to him, he's incredible.
Well, you were the hunter somewhat on Hartnell 6 years ago, and you saw the pressure that Huey had, so those roles were very much reversed today. How much was that weighing on you coming towards the corner, because it looked like he wanted to get your timing exactly right?
James would have, he made point of that, and but he trains these horses to perfection. I've had a lot to do with him over the last couple of months, and I just love how he thinks about things and executes things. He's got a superstar in his hands, and I'm just glad I was able to be the lucky the rider on him.
If he does go and take on the world, are you going to be attached?
That's a long way away. I'd love to, wouldn't say no.
Well done, J-Mac.
A champion horse and a champion rider. James McDonald ticks off the Cox Plate on his wish list. That is there what's left. A Caulfield Cup is about the only one, isn't it, for him left to win. Just unbelievable stuff.
I had a great chat to him last night, a really in-depth chat with J-Mac. And it is, you're right, the Caulfield Cup's the last of the majors. The majors used to be the Melbourne Cup, the Caulfield Cup, the Cox Plate and the Slipper. He's won all of those apart from the Caulfield Cup and, of course, the Everest and a bunch of other big races. He ran second on Rising Romance in the Caulfield Cup. Of course, Verry Elleegant won the Caulfield Cup, but Mark Zara rode on that occasion because James was at the Everest. So he's pretty determined to win a Caulfield Cup. This horse now, clearly the best horse in Australia. The question for them is, do they go one more race? There's the Champion Stakes, which is the renamed race on the last day of the carnival.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they need to be going there, but maybe this is going to be his last season, not saying last campaign. I thought On Thunderstruck in second was magnificent.
Yeah, New Zealand bred, yeah. A
Coming
great
from
weekend for Rich Hill Stud, wasn't it, with it being by Shocking?
Yeah, exactly, after all the success they had with Prasia a few hours earlier. So with James, it's now just normal that he wins $1 million races. I said to him yesterday, I said, how are you feeling about life? He said, how can I not feel good? How could I not feel good? I've just done this. I've just got the ride on Sharp and Smart. I'm riding La Creek. I'm riding a whole bunch of other good horses next week. And it's just standard now that he wins a major race every weekend. And there's the Champion Stakes market. This is absolutely a market you should not be betting into because nobody has any idea who's going to start in it. And as you know from all your time with horses, they'll trot those horses up Monday, Tuesday morning. They'll see how they gallop Thursday, maybe even next Saturday before they make any decisions. So just be really careful with that market.
Take the future-proof option.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, true. And just on Animo, it's funny, there's not a lot of hype around him, is it, yet? I think he's a horse who people love, but...
There should be, because...
There may be, exactly. Maybe,
Yeah.
like, consider horses who have inferior records to him, who we've rated superstars in the past. Maybe there's no New Zealand connection there. Maybe that's because of the Godolphin thing. I don't know why, but he has hopefully a big 6 or 8 months ahead of him. Really big question then for the Sheikh is, do we go again next season? And 2 or 3 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago maybe, you would have said, no, they'll retire him. But we're seeing a lot more in Europe in particular, horses given an extra season because the owners enjoy the racing of them and they want to take them to Ascot and do these things. That's going to be a really big question for them and for Darley to see how the whole thing works.
Yeah, it will. And I think the Cox Plate will just be the icing on the cake for him being regarded as a champion. Well, we stick at the Valley because we also have the Valley Gold Cup. This was an emphatic performance by Francesco Guardi, taking out the Group 2.
Francesco Guardi halfway up the straight, led by 3 lengths to Luna Flair, who's finishing well, but it's all Francesco Guardi to win the Gold Cup easily. 2.5 Luna Flair per San, a Gap Grand Promenade San Huberto.
As I said, an emphatic win by Francesco Guardi, but I think probably the main talking point is this horse was taken out of the Melbourne Cup, Michael, and I know the Connection's electing to wait a year and perhaps head to the Melbourne Cup next year, all being well.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is a super strong race. Luna Flair is going to the Melbourne Cup. The third was Per San. Kieran Marr chose the same thing. He said, we're not going to the Melbourne Cup. So that's a pretty good indication that people were thinking the Melbourne Cup winner wasn't in this field. There's just another $1 million race for James, as mentioned, but normal for him now.
Confidence giving one for the Cox Plate?
I would have thought this horse might go to the Queen Elizabeth on the last day, as Per San will do. Another one of the ex-Europeans who's come in, and most weeks we see those races past 2,000 metres in Australia are won either by the Kiwis or the ex-European horses. It's a confusing Melbourne Cup, isn't it? Because unless you've been getting on YouTube or the videos overseas, really Dover Legend's probably a complete myth to you, as would be some of these other horses. So really confusing, I think. I've seen Huyamao. I was actually at the sale where they sold it for 1.2 million guineas in London, but gee, it's a big ask to turn up here, and he ran second in the Derby, of course, in England. Turn up here and just win a Melbourne Cup.
It's anybody's race, isn't it? This,
it's a confusing
interesting
cup.
one. Yeah.
I think it's really confusing for New Zealand punters because you only know half the names there. But Trackside will look after you. They'll have a preview show next week. They'll try and give you as much information as possible. And if you get bored over the weekend, which you probably won't because it's Derby weekend, you can get online and do your research. That's the great thing. All the races are there. Sometimes it's just kind of hard to find them all. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
That's my job this week. I'm going to be going through that Melbourne Cup field in preparation for that Melbourne Cup preview show. So, yeah. It's intriguing.
It's really hard to line them up, but it'll be a lot of fun. I think for a lot of people too, it's not a race they bet seriously into, they bet for fun in the Melbourne Cup. So
pick the colours you like.
Well, as I said, for me, I'm more invested in the Derby because I know the people involved, I know the horses, the New Zealand industry is part of that. which this year's Melbourne Cup we're probably not going to be quite as much.
Another race we know plenty about is going to be that Empire Rose, isn't it? Because, of course, we've got Le Creek taking her place in the event. Not only that, but she's lickety-split in there as well. And this is another really exciting race, isn't it, for the Kiwis?
Group 1 on Saturday. So we have the Derby. Obviously, we've mentioned the 2 New Zealand favourites. First and third favourites for the Empire Rose. So let's go through the riders. She's lickety-split, 49 kilos. Dean Holland gets on board. He has an association with Andrew Forsman. They're very happy with her. La Creek travelled over last Wednesday, spoke to Katrina Alexander. She's happy. The horse is going to have its main gallop on Wednesday morning at Cranbourne. It's staying at Mornington, but the Mornington track's a bit angular for what they wanted. Now, this is important. James McDonald will head, he's staying in Melbourne for the 2 weeks of the carnival. He will head to Cranbourne to ride La Creek and Trackwork on Wednesday morning. He's never sat on the horse. He's never ridden for Katrina Alexander. He said, I'm going there, I want to have a feel of this horse. When I spoke to him yesterday, oddly, considering how many big race winners he's riding at the moment, he was buzzing. He said, I would love to win on this horse. I would love to win a Group 1 for New Zealand. So he's still very parochial. He'll sit on her on Wednesday morning at Cranbourne and get a feel for her leading into Saturday.
And Mustang Valley's another interesting one, isn't it? Because, of course, we saw her successful in the Livermore Classic. And what's the plan with her?
So Andrew Forsman's taken Mustang Valley, who we see winning here under Nabba at Hastings, and White Noise, who ran third yesterday in the Sale Cup and was really good in a race where there was a lot of pace on early and he couldn't get to where he wanted to be in the run. So this horse has an option. She actually has a couple of options. One of them is the Champion Stakes. Now, it may fall away with the Animos and the On Thunderstrucks, but it's still a bloody tough race to win. Whereas the other option is the Matriarch Stakes the same day for the mares over 2,000 metres, but it's only Group 2.
Okay.
Spoke to Andrew and he said, well, technically we're preparing her for the same thing. So a 2,000 metre race on the last day of the carnival, then we can always choose closer to time. So the owners will be part of that decision. Obviously, a Group 1 in Australia is awesome for her broodmare career, but that Group 1 might be 10 rating points higher overall, maybe 15, than the Matriarch, which may well be a race she can win. I said to Andrew, heavy track, is that where you're wanting in Melbourne? He said, no, I'm not concerned. I think she can be just as proficient on a dry track, but that decision not made on her yet. I know it's tempting, but gee, I'd go to the Group 2. The Group 1 looks awfully sticky for a mare.
And they've got time on their side.
They
can
have.
Go back.
They've got Sydney next year. They've got Brisbane next year. She's proficient in the wet. So, yeah, some question marks there. The right people doing the right things during the spring, the people charged with making those decisions.
Really looking forward to the next couple of weeks where we get to see all of those horses stepping out. There are a couple of other big races over the weekend, the rescheduled Manicato, and also from Sydney, the Invitation.
Best of Bordeaux and Ballanipatina has driven through underneath of those around the turn of the 150. Ballanipatina takes the lead, kicks clear 2 lengths, Rothfire and Best of Bordeaux streaking away. Ballanipatina, and boy, doesn't she deserve this. Ballanipatina 4 lengths.
And Promise of Success moved up on the outside of Nimmerly and Forbidden Love. It's Promise of Success just in front from Nimmerly. Electric Girl late. Promise of Success in front from Electric Girl, and Promise of Success wins the Invitation.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Well, as we do every week, it's time for You Weigh In. And a couple of weeks ago, Dylan Ferguson wrote in and he wasn't able to enter again, but he did comment on Twitter saying that we should have Graeme Rogerson as the winner this week. But we had another submission, and that was from Jason Ray. And he wanted to nominate the team behind Legato, who, of course, was successful on the weekend. What a wonderful job they do. And imagine, he said, having a horse as good as Levante. And the interview he did with Mick on Saturday morning was just delightful. So the team behind Legato win this week, and Jason Ray, you've got a $100 bonus bet from the TAB coming your way, and well done to you. If you want to enter and nominate your hero of the week, get in touch with us. You can see all the details there at the bottom of the screen. Domestic action over the weekend was in full force, Michael, and we'll start off with our reviews of those races with the Sarton Memorial. This was, of course, taken out by Wild Knight.
In came Alfriston down the outside, Wild Knight and Dynastic down to the 250. Academy Award put 3 lengths on them here. Academy Award in charge by 3. Wild Knight's warming up for Metrical, then Dynastic. Academy Award running on empty. Wild Knight is coming after it very quickly. Wild Knight going to Academy Award. Dynastic late with Desert Lightning. Wild Knight makes it 3 in a row. Wild Knight wins the Sarton.
I thought there was a lot to like about this performance, Michael. Came from behind one of the favourites in Dynastic and just put in those late bounds late, and really, really like what this horse was able to do. I feel like he's progressing and keeps on stepping it up.
A little bit of Tiakau Shark about him, a little bit of Mascarpone, very similar, flashy, big, long striding galloper, and he was super. He's come from last and he's gone straight past Dynastic, who was second favourite for the 2,000 guineas. Now, let's get the information you need to know out of the way. He's not going to the 2,000 guineas. So they didn't nominate him. They pulled him out and they said, look, this isn't the race for him. Watching him leave the parade ring after the win the other day, I thought he looked really light, like really light. They've done a good job to get him this far. He'll head to the Karaka Classic Mile.
Which you'd think would suit him down to the ground.
Also, of course, it's not at Allergy this year, which can be a trick for some horses fresh up. It's at Pukekohe. And he would seem a Pukekohe horse because he's a big wind-up type of horse. So Dynastic will be the stable rep there. Obviously, Wild Knight's a gelding, so the guineas isn't worth as much to him. Dynastic is going, and Josh Parr, who's a very good rider from Sydney, will ride him and the majority of the Tiakau horses at the carnival. What a great get for them to have Josh Parr coming across. So we lose the winner out of the race. Pierre is obviously going there. Cognito, who we'll see shortly, heading there. And I thought Desert Lightning quite good. I'll update you on This Is Dramatic a little bit shortly because we're going to see her as well. And Sacred Satono missed that race, had a rash, they treated it. Grant Cooksley saying, we're not absolutely certain to miss heading to Christchurch. So it's still potential we could head to Christchurch, but a less than ideal build-up for him because he's missed a lead-up race. They may try and get a trial into him if in fact he is to go.
Yeah. Excited to see Wild Knight heading forward. Dynastic was good, and as we heard there, pretty even actually when it comes to the 2,000 guineas this year. Up next, we have a little look at the Super Seth Soliloquy Stakes, and Legato was the winner of this one.
Lino coming after them, Valdezoldo, Flame Burden behind these, Stella Splendida, Romancing the Moon coming through, and Legato joining in down the outside, down to the 150, right across the track. Legato burst to the lead here, and the Soliloquy is all over. Whoa, have a look at her go as she's bolted in. Second over Romancing the Moon. Prowess got going late for third and then followed over by...
I must admit, Michael, I watched this race and then jumped on my laptop and was trying to see how was this horse related to Levante. Were they half sisters? You know, what was the connection? Because they look the same, they gallop the same, they have the same style of racing, but
same colours.
Same colours. There isn't a connection. And then...
Well, they're both by Prazer.
Yes,
so that
true.
Helps.
Yes,
that
he's stamping them. Yeah, but it's just the way that she does it. This has got to be one of the most exciting horses up and coming this season.
I thought Ryan Elliott might fall off here because he was looking around for everybody like, where did they all go? Well, they went that way. That was dramatic.
Yeah.
Dramatic stuff. I think a couple of the people who were looking at the 1,000 guineas are probably thinking, do I bother? Do I bother really? Am I going to beat her? Because Rickerton, over a mile, just perfect for her. She'll win the 1,000 guineas if they turn up in the right sort of form. Spoke to King Kelso this morning. Obviously, that's where she's heading. No chance of the double. The double's been reversed. In the old days, they might have thought, if we win the 1,000 guineas, can we go to the 2,000 the last day? But of course, the 2,000 comes first, and they wouldn't sacrifice one for the other. Prowess, I thought, just got a little bit lost. She's still very new, but she doesn't have long to become unnew. She's only got 3 weeks till this race, so...
She's a run behind, I felt as well, that she had the potential to come on for that effort on Saturday.
She's going to need to, isn't she?
Yeah.
Like, the gap was so big, so you would still be tempted to take her to Rickerton, but the other horse just beat her so easily. So I would suggest maybe she goes, haven't spoken to Roger and Robert about that, incredibly hard to make a case for anything who finished behind her there. That they'll beat her over a mile. So you spoke to Ken. they're hoping to fly her down. There's a flight that goes on Melbourne Cup Day, which will have both harness and gallops horses on it. And he doesn't want to go that early because it's 11 days before the 1,000 Guineas, but that might be the only flight. And every trainer you speak to in both codes is determined to get on that flight. So the question mark then is, can they fly home? The trainers hate roading them back because they feel it sets them back so much. So I think there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to get a flight back, and that gives them a far easier December and January. So those flights, which may not sound like the sort of thing you care about at home, massive deals for these horses getting to and back from the carnival and their ability to race on after the carnival.
Well, speaking of those colours in Ken Kelso, we also had Levante stepping out on Saturday at Tarapa. And here's a little look at her galloping in between races. She's with Ballon Rouge in this exhibition gallop, and she looks her normal, brilliant self, Michael. Very thick, isn't she? She's for a mare, she's very thick across the chest and very strong looking these days. Like, she's really filled out since we saw her a couple of years ago as a 3-year-old. She heads to Melbourne next week, and she's racing in the Darley Champion Sprint, not to be confused with the Champion Stakes. Now, that's become a wickedly hard race. Nature Strip and Giga Kick, and a whole bunch of other horses who are really good. I spoke to Ken about that again this morning. He said, look, we're going to give her the chance. There's nothing here for her. The Counties Bowl, she would get 61, maybe 61.5 kilos. Too much, so we head there. Mick D is confirmed to ride the horse. Oh, awesome. So the Caulfield Cup winning jockey, Mick D, who's been suspended last weekend, Mick will ride her in the Champion Sprint. Then she'll come home, and don't worry, she is definitely heading to the Railway. So Railway is still on the cards for her and the Telegraph. But when you look at that list there, wow. She was very good in the Newmarket, though, and there was some big names in that day. So, I mean, I don't rule her out at all. She's been up the straight, she's travelled. I don't rule her out. I would say the Newmarket wasn't anywhere as strong as that. Like, that's a wickedly strong race. Like, the Newmarket had Artorias and had, obviously, Rockin' Horse won the Newmarket and had Home Affairs, but it hasn't been a strong Newmarket post. Now, that's not any picking on Levante, it wasn't her fault, but that's an incredibly strong race. Good on them having a crack. And I had Philip Brown, as Jason mentioned, on the radio on SEN the other day. They actually also bred the winner of the first. So the first Santos winner, the horse who won the first race. That was impressive. Really good fun. So Ancroft start having a really cool time with their horses at the moment. For Ken, he gets to go to Melbourne. He said, I'm going to come back, change the bag, pack it around, go to Riccarton. I've got a hell of a week coming up with your 2 mares. And a special shout out to Warren Kennedy, who had his first winner there, champion South African who's moved to New Zealand, and congratulations to him. Successful aboard Cleese for John Bell. Well, up next, let's get you to the South Island, and of course we had the War Decree Stakes at Riccarton, and This Is Dramatic was the winner.
Bay looking for an out, wider is Malulabar. Cognito moved up with Chibano to This Is Dramatic. Kicking on in the centre, Mr. Twinkle Toes, and then Marlborough Bay. The leader Cognito down the middle, coming after This Is Dramatic, who's lifting. Malulabar wider, This Is Dramatic. This Is Dramatic at the 120. Cognito's 2 lengths away. She's getting away, the filly. It's This Is Dramatic in front from Cognito. This Is Dramatic for Go Racing won it. This Is Dramatic beat Cognito and Marlborough Bay.
Awesome weekend for Go Racing, Michael, and the blinkers went on and this horse delivered. God, she's a good rider, Tina Komanyagi. She's just a good rider. She's an outstanding judge of pace. They went slowly here, 1:38 from the mile, and that meant Cognito was in trouble at the back of the field. I think Jason moved at the right time, but this filly was too good. So he spoke to Lisa Latter, who also had a great weekend. Lisa said, I'm not sure. We've got 2 options, 1,000 guineas, 2,000 guineas. She believes, and you can make a very strong case for this, the 1,000 guineas is stronger than the 2,000 guineas. So that decision will be left to the Go Racing boys this week. But don't be stunned if This Is Dramatic turns up in the 2,000 guineas, still has the option to race in the 1,000 guineas. Decision pending there. All exciting stuff, and I have to agree with Lisa when it comes to that one. The Spring Classic was also a key race on the programme from Riccarton, and Elizabeth Rose was the winner of this one.
In the straight, and Jack Knows Best puts it to Summer Festival, who found Zilch into the clear. Let's bring it on. Campionessa and Bell of the Bull start to charge now. Here's the Tangerine Army. Campionessa and Bell of the Bull give chase to Jack Knows Best, and Elizabeth Rose through the centre. Elizabeth Rose going with Campionessa and then Bell of the Bull. Campionessa and Elizabeth Rose stride for stride. Elizabeth Rose finding Campionessa coming again, but Elizabeth Rose won the Spring Classic. Elizabeth Rose beat home.
Really found another gear late in the piece, didn't it? under the urgings of the jockey. And I know, Michael, you caught up with the connections and they were saying perhaps not too many options down south and they might be heading north.
Yeah, Shane Kennedy, who I spoke to this morning, he said, first of all, Anna Furlong deserves all the credit. This hasn't been an easy horse. Had a bleed last year and wasn't a serious one, but of course it was notified, so that's on her record now. And they've had to work through that and treat her and keep her happy. Now, to come back and win a race at this level, that sets up her broodmare career later on. But there's no particular 2,000 metre type races for her during the carnival. The mares races are shorter. The Met drops 2,500 and Shane was like, not so keen. There's plenty of 2,000 metre country cups floating around the South Island and the north, but they may head north looking for some more black type for her. So once a horse has a bleed, as you know, it's really scary that will you lose them again? Because if they bleed again, obviously they're still down for the rest of their careers. So Anna's done a great job with that, and Shane was really open about that. He said, I was at the Melbourne Cup, this is not the Cox Plate, sorry, he went to the Cox Plate. He had a great day out, and again deserves all the credit for that.
Oh, big shout out to Anna then off the back of that victory. Well, the Copeland's Mile is fast approaching during Cup Week, and we have the Copeland's Mile Prelude at Riccarton on Saturday. And race 9 was won by Perfect Scenario.
On the power then, not of the head, seriously back to the inside from Kaimar War and Perfect Scenario to the outside. Jewel of Patch, the roughie, leads Zelensky. Then came Reposa Repeater from Harbourside. Perfect Scenario, not of the head, a roaring home wider out. Perfect Scenario, the near side, the far side, Jewel of Patch, not of the head, trying to go with Perfect Scenario, but it went whooshka. Perfect Scenario won it by a couple on not of the head. Photos third.
And those tangerine colours down the outside, Perfect Scenario putting a good margin on them. Not of the head went well, Michael, but it was really all about one horse.
Yeah, and obviously perfect lead up for the Copeland's Mile, which is on the middle day of the carnival. Really impressive. I think Tiaka had 5 winners on the weekend, including one of the features out of Te Rapa. He heads there. Second horse heads there as well. So Not of the Head is also heading to the Copelands, and Lisa Latta, who trains that, also trains He's a Doozy, who we're about to see in our Ride of the Week race. Again, tricky market. Some of these horses aren't going to be turning up there, but yep, Lisa heads 2 and therefore a big chance in the race. Perfect Scenario after that, 12s into 7s. It's a tricky race. A lot's going to depend on Riccarton can get quite firm during the carnival. It'll be interesting to see how the weather reacts down there and who goes where.
Yeah, and you mentioned He's a Doozy, and of course He's a Doozy was successful in the Group 3 Thompson Handicap yesterday it was at Trentham, and it's our Ride of the Week brought to you by loveracing.nz. A big well done to Cosi Asano.
It's mud on the dance floor. You better not kill the groove, DJ. Gonna burn this goddamn house right down.
He's a Doozy's had a bit of a shuffle up here.
About your kind. And so and so and so and so and so and so and so. I'll have to play.
He's a Doozy looking to pierce through the last little bit. Marcus Aurelius. He's a Doozy getting through underneath of it, and then Deerfield fighting on. He's a Doozy. He's a Doozy for Cosio Stano, and a beautiful ride wins to Thompson.
It's murder on the dance floor, but you better not kill the groove. Hey, 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 it's murder on the dance floor, but you better not steal the moves.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Ohukia Lodge presents Lot 305, a bay colt by Lean Mean Machine out of 3-time winning Snitzeldam Thawaya. This colt is a half-brother to sprint winner Extraia and is Super Vobis nominated. Presented by Ohukia Lodge, Lot 305, a bay colt by Lean Mean Machine.
This was the fastest breeze up of the 277 lots engaged to take their place in that ready-to-run sale, and this one by Lean Mean Machine blasting it out over the distance there at the ready-to-run breeze-ups. So Monday and Tuesday, the 17th and 18th of October for those ready-to-run sales, and obviously just head to that NZB website to find out more about them and the vision of the breeze-ups. And obviously that pre-parade ring stuff is now available online. So head there and do your research and make sure you're on site for those breeze-ups on the 17th and 18th of November. Well, next up we have that all-important interview with Bruce Sharrock. There have been some big changes proposed to the Gambling Act, and NZTR have come out in support of those changes. We can find out more about that from Bruce Sharrock.
We're talking about the potential legislative change for geo-blocking of the New Zealand borders and gambling offshore. Bruce Sharrock, what is NZTR's attitude to that?
Mick, I think in a nutshell, the attitude is we fully support it. It's something that reflects within the 2003 Gambling Act. That act hasn't been reviewed for a long time. I think the evolution of the digital age illustrates that it's not fit for purpose in 2022, and we need to immediately address that.
There would be some people watching this who want to bet with who they want to bet with, who probably aren't aware, Bruce, that this has been a case in Australia for the last 3 years.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And, you know, we've lagged behind it once again. So the time is now for action. We really do need to encourage the government, and I do know that the TAB is working hard with them to bring this to life, and it's something that we fully support.
What sort of money are we talking? I hear figures that offshore gambling firms are taking $650 million away from New Zealand. Are those figures realistic?
Yeah, look, all the information I've had, Mick, is you're spot on. In total, we're talking about $650 million are leaving our shores into foreign operators, whether it be casino or wagering operators for sport and racing wagering. There's about 140 million of that goes into sport and racing, and a further half a billion goes into casino, online casino type wagering offshore.
So what type of money are we talking? We would hope, if this legislation goes through by the government, to retain in New Zealand, and more importantly for the people watching this show, what will that mean to the thoroughbred racing industry?
Yeah, Mick, good question. There's two parts. I think if we can have success around the sport and racing wagering, we're talking substantial transformational amounts of money that can assist our business, which clearly will lead to increased stakes and increased infrastructure improvements. The other part is conditional on the further legislative change that would mean that the TAB and others can now legally perform casino-type gambling here in New Zealand. That's another piece of legislation change altogether, but there is nothing to stop them blocking those people wagering offshore now.
All right, Bruce, people are going to say transformative money. They don't know what that means. People watching Weigh In today don't understand what that means. Give me a ballpark. Give me something which is realistic and something which isn't bullshit, and people at home can go, okay, I now know why these guys want this.
Yeah, look, and there are many complexities. So whilst you've asked for a number, I'm going to throw a number out there, circa 100 million profit to the TAB. As a major beneficiary of that, the Thoroughbred Code would look to have 57% of that. That's transformational to our industry, and something that's sadly needed at the moment as we look to try and raise the standard right across the board with our industry.
If this happens and thoroughbred racing can get an extra $57 million a year inside 3 or 4 years, what does it mean for the people watching this show? What are they going to have a better version of?
A raft of things. Look, first and foremost, stakes. I mean, you know, our stakeholders are hungry for more. We know what happens across the ditch. I'm not for a moment going to say we're going to compete in that realm, but we can clearly lift well beyond the 100 million in stakes to make this place something we're immensely proud of and something people can make a very, very good living out of right across the board here in New Zealand.
The question some people would ask is, why hasn't this happened so far? I realise there's a lot more appetite from overseas operators to chase our dollars. Here's a more important question. What happens if it doesn't get legislative change? What happens if the overseas bookmakers and overseas casinos are allowed to unfetteredly play into the New Zealand market?
That's a major concern, and that's the key reason we've got to be acting now. The short version is that the TAB is effectively fending off all sorts of operators who are coming over and picking the eyes out of our wagerers here in New Zealand, and they are not playing on a level playing field. So that's a key reason it's got to be addressed, and addressed immediately. I guess the other one, Mick, is, you know, for our stakeholders, and I weekly know how passionate they are. We have an abandonment, we have a trials meeting with limited entries, we have some extremely passionate people about it. I can tell you now, this is the one reason you need to get very passionate about and get in behind and support this legislative change, because it will underpin our industry.
There would be some people who say, well, don't we have joint ventures with the sports bets and the Bet365ers and Ladbrokes and Entain? If we have joint ventures, aren't we getting enough money back from them regardless?
So by joint ventures, I assume you're meaning race fields. That will continue. Those are Australian people and others wagering on our vision and our form here in New Zealand. That continues. I think the point you might be leading to is the partnering side of this business. There is nothing surer that by geo-blocking our country enhances the value of the TAB and the partnership opportunities they will seek and are seeking if that was to go ahead.
You're going to be dealing with a Labor cabinet and a Labor government on this for the foreseeable future. How important is the harm minimisation? How important is problem gambling and the fact that the TAB puts money into helping that issue in this country and the overseas bookmakers do not put money into this country in helping that? How important is that an issue which could be improved by this legislation?
Mick, again, a really, really key point. The short version is, of that 650 million that's leaving our shores, there is not 1 cent captured to enter into harm minimisation schemes. It is a massive benefit to our entire nation that we start to capture the money that's flowing offshore. So again, that point has to be stressed immensely, that by ring fencing the country and retaining that money here means that all of the wagering operators here, TAB, Lotto, casinos, can all put funds back into harm minimisation programs.
You will have mates. I've got mates who like to open their phone and have a bet with overseas betting operators. There's people watching this show right now who do the same. What would you say to those people, and how important an issue is this in the raft of issues facing NZTR?
Mick, you know, I'm not one to get terribly excited, but I've got to tell you right now, this is the most important thing that our industry as a whole needs to mobilise and be vocal about. We need support from the government right now to make this happen. This will underpin our future. This will underpin the 15,000 people that are employed. It will underpin the 1.6 billion that we contribute to the economy. We want to see that grow. We want to see our industry up where it belongs on a global stage. This is the most critical piece of legislation support, that bar none. So we need to get excited about it.
What about the guys and girls who want to have their $20 on with an overseas operator this Saturday because they like the choice or they like the bet types? Is the TAB in a space now where they can offer a good enough service to keep those people interested? Are they doing enough?
Look, the TAB is working hard. They're not there yet. And part of it is chicken and egg, right? So once they stabilise their wagering base, they can then enhance all of their offering and services. The other part of that, of course, is if they do enter into a partnership arrangement, that's the other equation that enters here, is that we will have all of those products and services that are currently being offered around the globe here. But we need to get this piece of legislation across the line first.
Who's on point? Who's on this? Is this you and Cameron George pushing this? Mike Todd from the TAB? Have you spoken to the Minister about this, and what is his appetite for this?
Look, the board as a whole is completely behind this. We've had meetings with the Minister, we've had meetings with the TAB numerous, and look, everybody is supportive of it, but I think it's time that as an industry, we cannot sit idle and watch this pass by. This is critical, and it's something we need to get in behind and make sure that our fact and the facts are known from our industry perspective.
Big thank you to Bruce Sharrock for his time and transparency with that interview for us on Weigh-In. Michael, we heard from Bruce there, but why is this so important?
We need the money. There's only so much land we can sell, and we need the money. And at the moment, with all this money heading offshore, we get some of it back through Racefields legislation. We don't get enough back. And the TAB as an entity may not be sustainable if the Bet365ers and Entain keep going after its customers. They just might lose too many customers. So we need that money. Now, this is exactly the same legislation they have in Australia. If you live in Australia, you cannot bet offshore. You cannot. Now, they have bookies, so it's slightly different, but those bookies were already there We didn't have bookies before the Gambling Act in 2003. We've been usurped in that space by the internet. Now, that money goes to predominantly English-based betting agencies who have nothing to do with us apart from race rules legislation. Let's keep the money in the country. Now, the other option that is people are looking at me and saying, well, that's right for you to say, I want to bet with Ladbrokes and I want to bet with Sportsbet. Well, that's okay, but you can't have both. You can have the option to have your $50 on with an overseas bookmaker because you like betting with mates or you like their options. And the TAB is going to provide more options heading forward. They've massively set up things like Punters Promise and Future Proof, which have aided the punters here. So the service is getting better. And I understand people want that choice, but you can't have both. You can't watch the Everest and go, Peter V'landys is God and he'll do this. This is exactly what V'landys would do if he ran New Zealand racing, exactly what he would do. We can't criticise Mike Todd and Cameron and Bruce for wanting this, and the bosses at Harness Racing New Zealand and Greyhound Racing New Zealand are also on board. If they let this go unfettered, the industry will be frittered away. We'll lose punters. And this is the only revenue stream we have. Forget sponsorship. The only revenue stream we have that matters is this. They have to try and get this through. They have to lobby government. This is not certain to happen, but we need changes to the Gambling Act, and we can write into those changes and into the Gambling Act punter protections. It's a big issue. I know it's confusing. I know it has some people who aren't happy either way. We'll keep them up to date here on Weigh In, but if we don't do this, we are not going to be the industry we could be.
Very interesting point, and no doubt we'll get some more airtime in the coming months. For now, though, there was official news during the week that Verry Elleegant has been retired. What a wonderful mare she's been. Before we go, Michael, favourite performance?
Had to be the Melbourne Cup. James's redemption race. It's a week out from the next Melbourne Cup. For you, there was so many to choose from.
Yeah, I'd go Melbourne Cup too. It was just magic.
Hard to believe it was only a year ago.
I know, it was.
Are you on a Melbourne Cup preview show next week? Are you going to tell us all the things we need to know? Because you picked the trifecta 1 year. So.
Oh, 1 year. I'm still hanging my boots on that. I'm just still riding that wave. But yes, that's my job this week. But we'll leave you with Verry Elleegant's Melbourne Cup moment.
400 metres, a length and a half, floating artist. Here's Verry Elleegant. She's coming home. 300 to go. The mighty mare moves up to incentivise and races on by. Then floating artist Spanish Mission. But Verry Elleegant at the 150. The darling of the turf has raced clear. 3 lengths incentivise. And it's Verry Elleegant. 10 Group 1s. And now the greatest of them all, the Melbourne Cup.